Welcome to Instagram vs. Reality, Episode 7. If you're new to this series, here we go over some of the millions of pictures posted to Instagram daily, and we talk about some of the edits and Photoshop techniques that are used to get a similar effect. As always, I want to put out the disclaimer that I'm not trying to single anyone out or to harm or injure their brand. Now, let me clarify some things from Episode 6. I mentioned that in modeling, the beauty standard wants Slavic features in their models. That's caused some confusion. Call it Slavic, call it Scandinavian, call it Germanic, or call it Eurocentric. There's a reason Russia has the highest number of models by population, their features being one of them. There's no point in arguing about semantics. If you want to be really picky, Caucasian features strictly refers to people from the Caucasus Mountains, but we universally understand it to include a much larger group of people. The point being, Tony Mahfoud enhanced his natural features to be more in line with Eurocentric standards. You're not out here thirsting after Aziz Ansari, so to act like it has nothing to do with facial features is ridiculous. Your features are determined by your ethnicity. That's scientific fact. Scientists measured a whole range of facial features such as face width and interpupillary distance, to name a few, and found significant variations by ethnicity. While variations exist person to person, these averages of human faces are the result of millions of facial data highlighting key differences between ethnic groups, like nose shapes. Tony's had a rhinoplasty, but his eye color is in doubt as I expressed in the video. Either way, the point of the video was not an investigative journalism piece into uncovering Tony's real eyes. It was to show you how easily fake contacts could be edited to look like the real thing, especially when influencers have been proven to be faking it by their own fathers. You can't deny it, this is the reality that we live in. Open discussion is good into getting people to be more critical thinkers, but to argue about semantics and technicalities blatantly ignores the real problem, detracting from the message about Eurocentric beauty standards. Nobody is Instagram retouching themselves to follow the Mauritanian beauty standard of looking fatter for their potential husbands, or disfiguring their feet to achieve the lotus feet of Imperial China. They're getting rhinoplasty to get button noses and canthoplexic ski slope features. Apparently, I've been focusing on women editing their photos too much, so this week we'll look at men photoshopping their images. First picture in, oh man. His face is so textureless, it looks like a bad render, so compare the texture on his hand with his face. That's what his skin should look like. Obviously this is heavily edited, but it's a good time to remind you all that if you're going to smoothen yourself, you need to deliberately leave some flaws in. Perfectly smooth and creaseless is a dead giveaway. The majority of modeling retouching involves smoothing skin complexion and not erasing pores. You can do everything in between, but once you erase the pores, you get the overdone look. Moving on, this man has scaled a mountain with a very respectable view, but why did he have to take his shirt off? His sternum doesn't line up with his linea alba, which is the line that splits your abs. He's photoshopped on his abs because his chest is facing the same direction as his body, but didn't use the wrap tool to angle the abs to the correct perspective. If he just faced the camera dead on, he could have probably pulled this off. I'm pretty impressed that he managed to keep the tattoo on his obliques. I'm gonna guess that this was done by lowering the opacity of the abs layer and then putting a mask over the tattoo. The lighter tattoo is his real skin. Either he does only ab day every day, or the rest of his body isn't well developed enough to be in harmony with the photoshopped abs. I know this next one isn't really Photoshop, but it's an interesting concept to talk about. Apparently these type of drawn-on edits were performed for prisoners so that they'd have a respectable photo to present. Technically it's not even an edit, it's just a cardboard cutout. Here's another old school example. Skin retouching has been around for a very long time. As I explained in a previous video, this was done by editing the negative directly or by using a faint blur lens in case of video recording to reduce skin resolution up close. An incline table was often used that shone light from behind. The original negative was varnished to stop it from reacting with the light, much like a layer in Photoshop. The artist would painstakingly draw on the desirable edits like a painting with silver halides onto the negative directly and then develop both layers together. I put the source in the description, so you should have a look, it's a very comprehensive article on the topic. This man is running for Congress. I have so many questions. What I love about this photo is not the horribly blurred face, but the fact that he photoshopped himself in front of a low resolution picture of the American flag, and it wasn't even done well. If you want to crop something out, you have to take your time and do it with the pen tool. It's the best way to avoid taking your background with you like this. Here's an example of photo versus video. The fact that he's wearing the same outfit suggests that these two images were taken quite closely apart. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say maybe that he took his photos after a good pump at the gym, but there are so many features like his shoulders and especially his clavicles, which are far broader than anything the gym can help you with. The tattoo on his bicep is also straightened. Even if you gain some size on your biceps, unless the skin migrated down like an octogenarian, then there's no other way of explaining how the tattoo would straighten itself. His forearms are also considerably larger. The size they're at takes years and years of dedicated training because forearms and calves are some of the most resilient and stubborn muscles to grow. I really wanted to give this guy the benefit of the doubt, but then I found these photos. There's no shadow in this pic and he's clearly photoshopped himself in because the white balance on his body doesn't match the background. Users on r/Instagram Reality also say that he's heavily editing his legs as they're a different size every month. That's a lot of editing work, and don't get me wrong, some of these are good edits that were undone only by his video appearances. In my experience, I've noticed that guys edit their bodies more and girls edit their faces more. Here's a simple case of the liquify tool, with the road sloping upwards. You could have easily straightened the road back and this wouldn't have been a problem, but this is the disadvantage with Facetune, which is consumer grade software versus Photoshop, which is professional grade. Using your thumbs, you can't get the level of accuracy or control needed to straighten the road back up in Facetune. And here's another liquify edit. Impossibly thin V-tapers on men like this are actually quite possible, but incredibly rare. IFBB pro Brian Buchanan was known for his waist. The liquify edit done here also distorts his arm into jello. If you're going to do this, stand in front of a simple background like a plain wall. And here's another liquify edit, but this time for his thighs. He's dragged the bar downwards, meaning that he's actually made his thighs smaller, which is a first for me, but looking around there's also a sudden blur zone here, which, as I talked about in a previous video, is an artifact left behind by liquify tool use. He's very slightly pulled his pelvic bone out to get a more defined V-taper. The edits are very small and subtle, which is the correct way of doing it, and if it weren't for the background, it would have been 100% passable. I know it's another liquify edit, but it's got something that I want to talk about. If you zoom in, you can see the mat deforming to his will as he skillfully edits his waist and brings the mat along with it. Even without the mat though, the reason why this picture seems uncanny is because he has a 10% body fat waist while clearly not being 10% body fat. It's like this photo, as someone in the comments pointed out, is an 80kg booty on a 50kg girl. This is the equivalent for guys where the love handles are typically the last to go and only ever disappear at 10% body fat, at which point the abs should be far more defined. I'd guess that he's actually meant to be at 15% body fat. You would think that, considering most men exclusively rely on the liquify tool, they would have probably learned how to use it by now. This fine gentleman has pulled his straps upwards, which is odd because he could have edited his biceps or his shoulders very slightly, but instead went for the busiest part of the photo, resulting in this tsunami warning system in the background. I'm going to finish up with one more liquify. Even I'm getting bored of it by now, but photos like this aren't really going to help you learn anything new, so I'm going to keep going. This picture looks like a normal picture for the most part, but his biceps are huge, enough to bend the wall around him. This is a great picture to use to explain image artifacts. I go in depth in this video here, but you can clearly see the sudden aura of blur forming at the outline of his suit. The more you stretch the image, and he's really pushed his Adobe gains, the greater the computer blurs the image to make up for the missing pixels. The patterns on this side of the wall are straight, while here they're all sorts of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and then go back to normal. If you're going to make your biceps bigger, make sure you enlarge your hands proportionally too, or you end up like this. Alright, so that's the end of another episode. More videos in the Defining Beauty series are coming out in 3 to 4 days, where I'll talk about the importance of eye shape and eye support. Follow me on Instagram, where I do edits like this of my day-to-day life, and you can always send me messages or pictures to look at if you want my opinion on it. As always, if you enjoy the content, be sure to like and subscribe to show your support. Enable notifications if you really like the content, and help me out in the comments if there's something I've missed or I don't know about the photos.